Property management's a tough gig. And I mean, really, really tough. Not always attractive, but it's made even worse often by the agency, the systems, the processes, or the lack thereof. So the very first thing that I'd be making sure to, if you want to try and increase staff retention, develop a staff retention plan. Most don't. Like, have a written documented plan. What do we want to do? How do we look to building an onboarding program? So recruit the right people, onboard them properly. My onboarding program is 6 months. So if I've got a brand new person, 6 months. When I do consultancy, when I go into consultancy businesses, or when I'm doing training, particularly when I'm doing speaking at conferences from stage, and I talk about onboarding, I say, here's onboarding 101. Start at 9 o'clock, get coffee by 9:05, get shown the toilets by 9:10, sit at the computer by 9:15, have a look at all the passwords that are no longer haven't been set up correctly, and by 9:30, off and running. Poor. That's onboarding. And that's how we do it. Ridiculous. And we wonder why people leave. I can tell you that most people that start a job on a Monday have checked out by 5 o'clock that day. They just haven't left yet. So onboard, recruit correctly, onboard correctly, and then develop a staff strategy for professional development. So these are the things that I work on.
Welcome to another episode of the Property Management Podcast. I'm Kylie Walker. Thank you for having me in your ears. I'm going to share a little insight into what is currently going on inside my own business right now. Most importantly, though, I want to share with you the valuable lessons that I have learned from these current experiences, because ultimately we learn the most in the tough times in our life and in our businesses. I'm currently losing management's 2 former employees. They've targeted attack, and it's all been very stressful and upsetting. But I've learned some very valuable lessons, like I said, and I want to share these with you. Firstly, as the business owner or principal, you need to make sure that you maintain your relationship with your clients. Have regular check-ins, consistently offering value through investor education, and maintain your position as the go-to person in the business. I had stepped out of my business for 3 years and I'd lost a lot of connection with my client base. Secondly, make sure your business systems and processes are so remarkable and done so well that it doesn't matter who is sitting in the property management seat. The client is so impressed with your business and how it is being run that regardless of the turnover, your business is why they are staying with you. Being away from my business for an extended period, and I'm not making excuses here, I didn't think I'd be stepping back into it, to be honest, and it was heading for a sale 12 months ago. A lot of my systems, processes, and procedures fell by the wayside while I wasn't there, and they simply weren't followed through with my leadership or the teams that came through the business while I was absent. So they are the 2 biggest lessons that I learnt in this situation. And my guest today also provided some valuable solutions to situations like that and many more, to be honest. I didn't realize this conversation would end up a coaching and consulting session that I really needed, but it did. I want you to meet Michael Furlong, and if you're from Victoria, you probably already have heard of him. Michael started his journey in real estate with property investment purchase in 1998. Intrigued by the process and frustrated by the lack of customer service he experienced, he transitioned from existing career to become a buyer's advocate, working with investors, and then an agency principal himself, focusing primarily on sales and project marketing. He admits he was a pretty crappy boss or property management boss back then. After realizing the problem of high staff, renter, and investor turnover that was an epidemic in the property management sector, Michael identified the issues in his own business where they were lacking in terms of systems, standards, training, knowledge, and strategy, and it was costing him thousands of dollars each month just to keep the doors open. And he started questioning, is it really all worth it? And so Michael entered the space of consulting and training, launching his business Rentroll Maximizer. And whether it's corporate or franchise group training, in-office training, presenting at conferences, or direct real estate consulting, he works with some of the industry's best brands across Australia and New Zealand. Take a listen to this episode, but I want you to grab a pen and a paper because there's some really actionable takeaways from this interview. Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. Before we dive on in, can you please share with our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing what you're doing now? For those of you, I'm sure many people listening know who you are, but yeah, tell us a bit more about yourself.
That's a nice little ego stroke that not everyone would know. In Melbourne, they would, but not everyone. So thanks, Colin. I really appreciate the invitation. I've been in real estate 25 years and I've progressed from owning a business, and I'll probably share a little bit as we go through, but my business was horrible. It was really, really ordinary as I was a sales-based principal who didn't really understand property management. I didn't like it and was really horrible at owning it, but I owned it. And I had partners who actually knew even less. So I realized that I needed to fix that side of things. So when I did, and I understood the property management side, that's when I realized, hey, there's a whole world out there that I was not aware of in the real estate space. And for the last 15 years now, I've been property management only. And when I sold the rent roll in 2015, after winning a couple of awards, so we went from, and I like to say this, we went from chaos to award winning. And in 2015, I set up a consultancy business specifically for Michael Furlongs. The Michael Furlongs out there, which are the directors that own a real estate property management business, but don't really understand it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years now, training, consulting, working in the property management space, not in the sales. I haven't done sales for such a long time. It feels very foreign for me. But yeah, so hopefully that's a good I've come from a very low base, so it was easy to scale up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the industry, you would have been one of the early originals in that consulting space of property management, because it is a space that has lacked that direction. There's been lots of real estate sales trainers and consultants around over the years, but property management was definitely lacking in that area. So, and that's the topic we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about everything: coaching, training, consulting. And actually, I had an experience yesterday where I was reminded of the importance of having that tribe or those people in your corner. I've got 2 former employees who are going after my rent roll fairly aggressively, which is very stressful as a business owner, and also very hurtful that these people have been part of your your business community. Yeah. And I was actually in a pretty bad state yesterday, but I had 2 coaching sessions with different coaches for different things. And by the end of the day, I had completely shifted my mindset. I'd stopped rocking in the fetal position. And they gave me some really good positive things to focus on. I've got an action plan moving forward. My week is a lot more organized. But when we're business owners, we feel like we've got to struggle alone, and we're the only ones going through what we're going through. But the reality is we're not, and lots of people have experienced what we've got, and people like yourself, Michael, and other coaches and consultants can actually help.
Absolutely. But you know what's interesting? And look, that's not good that you've been through that. But I tell you what does happen is it does build your character. It builds your character when you do get attacked. And then you can start to see how strong you need to be. And you might be going to depths at the moment, Kylie, that you didn't know you had. And a lot of that is all around how do you deal with it both professionally, but also mentally. If you've got staff that are in your office, in your corner, in your team that are then attacking you, that's not a good spot to be in. But one of the things that I found back, and I'm talking about 15 years ago now, when I would go to an event or a lunch or catch up with another sales principal, I would ask them, how's your property management department going? And universally, the response would, doing great. It's fantastic. And I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing wrong that mine is so bad? And so what I realized is I had to change the narrative in the questions. So then I started to ask them detailed questions. And what I realized was that a lot of sales-based principles, and I'm talking about my network at the time and 15 years ago, so maybe a little bit different now, particularly post-COVID, but what they were really checking was, what did we bank? How many properties did we start the month with? And how many did we end the month with? And did any staff leave? Done. That was the end of month report. And so as long as those indicators were fine, Sales-based principals at the time were then telling me, yeah, property management's doing great. So I had to learn to ask different questions. Are your properties profitable? Well, and they would say, I don't know. It's not, that's not that, I don't deal with that. So that's what I realized, was that I wasn't asking the right questions. I certainly ask the right questions now. And interestingly enough, when I do start to ask those questions of sales-based principals, or even principals that own a property management, particularly solopreneurs, like the person's got about 200 properties on their own, they also don't know those things. They're too busy in it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So coaching's really good. And it's great you've got an action plan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's given me something to focus on rather than dwelling on all that negative stuff.
Yeah.
It's given me the positive stuff that I need to focus on. How can I bring in more managements? How can I improve the service? And I've learned some valuable lessons as well. Letting go of too much of me being the investor educator. I let go a lot of that. And that's, they've kind of swooped on that. But anyway, enough about those lessons. But maybe dive into tell me the questions that you do ask now, and how can somebody listening know whether or not, and we're digressing a little bit, but I think it's really important for business owners, solopreneurs, sales-based principals to understand, is their property management business being successful?
Yeah. Well, that's why my business is Rent Roll Maximizer. It's all about maximizing the rent roll. But one of the things I just wanted to just comment on, and it's interesting, I believe that all coaches, trainers, consultants need to have a coach. So it was really encouraging for you to then turn around and say you had 2 coaching calls yesterday, because one of the first criteria, whenever I'm talking to businesses and they say, oh, I'm getting Freddie Blogs to come in and do my training. And I said, does that person have a coach? Does that person work with someone else? And if it's no, I wouldn't put them into my business, because I'm a student rather than a teacher. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Absolutely.
So I've had a business coach for 6 years, same group, same person, same team, and I thrive. And it's weekly. So I'm doing coaching sessions myself, 3 to 4 hours a week, on developing myself so that I can then go and take that back through to my clients. So it's great that we're in the same mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all does start with yourself, ultimately.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like to think that I don't teach or share anything that I haven't experienced myself.
Love it.
Yeah. And that's where my coaching or my sharing of knowledge comes from. But let's break down then, what is the difference between a consultant, a coach, a trainer, and how do you know which one of those that you might need in your business right now?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I try and steer away from the coaching side. It's not something which I promote myself to do. And the reason for that is because I believe, and again, these are just thoughts and so forth, I believe that coaching property management and property managers is really tough, because it's a different dynamic, different personality, different persona to coaching a salesperson. So sales coaches tend to have it a little bit easier, because you've got someone they're motivated generally by money or ego or prestige or making the targets. Whereas property managers are a very, very different beast. Property managers are more constant. So I tend to, and when I set my business up, I said, instead of going out and trying to coach, of which there were lots in the space, in the sales, no one, and as you mentioned before, no one really, probably 1 or 2 that I know of here in Victoria. So I really work in the consulting space. So I consult and train. I don't train and consult. And I know that's a little bit of semantics, but so I feel that it's important to actually work alongside the teams. So I roll my sleeves up and get in, and I use the word embedded, Kylie. So I get in and I work with the team. I often will have a desk. I'll have a profile. I'll have an email. I'm an extension of. So in many of my projects over the last 10 years, I've either become, I'm a virtual. So I'm either a virtual general manager, I'm a virtual department manager, I'm a virtual trainer, but I feel as though I'm embedded in the team. I'm not just someone who's afar and I've got a dedicated interest, because I want to make sure that these people succeed. So I feel as that's really important too. So consulting to me is physically getting in and doing. Coaching is me telling to do, and training is me telling from a group. So the consulting is I'm actually standing there doing it with them. And then I'll say, Kylie, come and sit with me. Let's do this. This is what I've done. I've developed this system. This is how it works. Here's the training video, which I've recorded for you. So if I'm gone and you need to figure out what to do, here's the training video. But I roll my sleeves up and I get in and I go in and do that with them. Because that's, as you know, with your own business, you're time poor. So you don't want to be bringing in somebody to tell you to say, here's a list of 1,000 things to go off and fix, and I'll be back in a month. That's coaching. And in my experience, I've just never been, I don't know whether it's me, but I've just never been able to get any results by doing that. So what I do is I sit down and say, Kylie, here are the 20 things we're going to work on this month. I'm doing 16 of them. I'm going to sit here remotely, or I'm going to be in your office. I'm going to do them. And then what we'll do is we'll gather back at the end of the month and we'll go through these 16. And then I'll train the team of what we've done. So I'll stand up and I'll train, but I'll have already had in Trello a training video so that when I'm gone, I bug it off and someone says, oh, I didn't really understand what Michael was saying. They can just jump back on and watch it. It's on YouTube. That to me is the panacea of fixing a business. I've not been able to, so I have a cookie cutter approach. When I first started doing this, interesting, in 2015, 16, 17, I would walk into your business and think that it needed a bespoke, unique solution. And that would be fine. I would build it. Then I'd go to the next Kylie's office and I'd build a bespoke, unique solution. Then I'd go to the next one, bespoke, and I come back and I went, hang on, shit, they're the same things. So now what I do is I walk in and I say, Kylie, I have the solution. It's cookie cutter. I'm going to plonk it in and then we'll train it because it's worked. It's proven. It's not bespoke. I don't come in and customize it anymore. Yeah, it's not. It's more of a, here's the solution.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. It is, we all experience pretty much the same issues in property management. It's staffing. That's the big issue. It's systems, processes, it's customer service. It is all the same solutions. So when you go in, and we did skip the question earlier about how do you tell if you need services like coaching? Well, let's go back to that one and then I'll ask the next one.
Sure.
How do you know if you need, what is the big telltale signs that you need consulting and training and coaching?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I think that all businesses should. And it's not because of me, and obviously I can't, I'll just use Melbourne, there's like 4,000 real estate agents. I can't be to everywhere. But all businesses should have someone external overseeing, and even if it's attending the directors' meetings, you need to have some clean eyes that come in that don't know the business. So know the business, but don't get embedded in it. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about here is if I go into your business and I was to pull up, because I do a lot of compliance auditing, if I pulled up a management authority or an agency agreement and it wasn't in the right names or it had different fees and those sorts of things, I would sit there and I'd say, that's non-compliant. And then you would turn around and say to me as a director, oh, and hang on, that's my cousin's uncle's brother's mother, and that's all right, we're fine. I don't do that. It's either compliant or non. And this is why a clean set of eyes are really important. So I think it's really important that every business has someone overseeing it, whether you do it annually, whether you do it quarterly, monthly. I think you will fast track your development and your growth by having an external peer to bounce ideas from. The beauty that I have is that I'm working with agencies around Australia and New Zealand, so I can cherry pick the best of the best and bring it back into, consolidate it, and then plonk it into, I use the word plonk, develop, integrate into an office. So how do I know? Typically what's happening at the moment, and I'm Victorian based, so for the last 3 years, every office that has gone through the transition of our new tenancy laws, unless they've upgraded, migrated, completely changed their systems, they need consultancy. Every office, irrespective of whether I've got a client at the moment I just picked up over the weekend, has 12 properties. Now I have other clients. I've got one that I've been working with. I'm their head trainer. We've got 3,300 properties across 13 offices. So I'm working from all ends of the spectrum. Kylie, it's the same problems. Compliance, documents, staff knowledge. I did a training session yesterday, 4 hours with a group of teams, about 30 odd property managers. And we talked all about rental minimum standards. And the questions that I was getting yesterday are the same questions I would have got last week and the same questions I'm going to get next week. So at the moment, all offices, in my opinion, should have someone come in and have a look and just tick off, make sure that they're compliant, make sure they're meeting the standards. We have, I'm sure you've heard about this, but we have the Victorian government's just announced a task force that will go out and start auditing, and they're coming, rather than the carrot approach, which is how do we fix this, they're coming with the stick.
Oh, wow.
This is how we will find you. So that was announced 2 weeks ago. And that task force is now put the wind up a lot of directors, a lot. So we're 3 years into the changes, and I think Queensland,
We just started last year.
Yeah. Well, we're 3 years in, and 2 weeks ago we had the announcement of the Victorian task force, and the fines are significant. So $11,000 for individuals and $57,000 en masse for businesses. So it's not uncommon that these businesses will be fined. But I had 2 more agency directors ring me and said, I need to have a look at my office because I don't think we're ready. And we're 3 years in.
Yeah.
So
that's scary. Yeah.
Oh, it is absolutely, but it's common. It is very, very, very common. Yeah. So the problem, I think, sorry, Carl, I was going to say, the problem I think at the moment with a lot of directors is it's the ostrich in the sand. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So because I'm being told with the greatest respect to the department manager, team leader, that's not the person you should be asking about for compliance. That's more operational. You need to have someone else come in from outside, have a look and say, does this measure up? And what are our risks? So they're the things that I look at the moment. It's so risky.
It is.
That was one of the things that scared me. When I understood property management, I realized how much risk was involved. I slept a lot worse when I knew once I started to know the risks, then I really was uncomfortable about it.
Yeah. And the beauty, I think, of having somebody external is that you don't have to pay a whole wage and have, you know what I mean? You get and you only need to have somebody come in for that period. It doesn't have to be, for 12 months. It can be for 3 months or 2 months or whatever. And at least you know that you are covered. You can sleep better at night.
Absolutely.
And it's somebody that, and I always like to think of it, people should do what they do best in their businesses. So
swim in the lane.
Yeah, not every director is good with, and I'm terrible with compliance and paperwork. It's not my thing. I'm good with business development. I'm good with growth strategies and marketing. That's my lane. But when I do try to dive into the compliance, and it just ends up in chaos. My head ends up in chaos. My team ends up in chaos.
We need to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know a person that can help you.
Absolutely. Actually, well, speaking of that, with my current situation that I'm going through with my rent roll being poached at the moment, how would you coach or consult me through a situation like that? Because I'm sure there's other people that have been through this in the past, want to prevent it happening in the future. Yeah, how would you help me through this situation? If you are anything like me, you think you know your rent roll numbers. Well, I thought I did until I had a rent roll health check, and I was quite literally shocked. The money I was leaving on the table was astounding, and this is not something that I'm proud to admit. There were missed management fees, let fees, advertising, and lease renewal fees not being charged, and properties even without bonds. And all of this was happening despite monthly audits being conducted in my business. So how did I uncover all these gaps in my valuable income? Well, I had a rent roll due diligence from my good friend Tazi, aka the Rent Roll Queen and founder of the Tazi Way, a specialist in rent roll due diligence, business valuation and management rights. The Tazi Way is the innovative force driving the real estate industry. With 25 years of business and real estate acumen, they find gaps and risks in your agency to find undiscovered value. If you'd like to book your business in for a rent roll due diligence, head to the link in the show notes and mention That Property Mum for a 10% discount. If you're ready to be a super organised, focused and productive property manager, buckle up, because Colmio is about to revolutionise the way that you work. Colmio is the driving force behind property management excellence in residential real estate. Now picture this, a comprehensive end-to-end system designed to be the beating heart of your property management tasks, manage your properties, owners and tenants, and handle payments, inspections, and even marketing listings without leaving the platform. Comio is designed to be an all-in-one solution to all your property management needs. And here's the game changer. Comio isn't just software. It's been awarded the most innovative prop tech scale up in 2023. Yes, you heard it right. Comio has been recognised for their groundbreaking approach to property management software. How good is that? So property managers, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, dive into the future of property management with Comio. You can book in a demo with the team today and go in their weekly draw for a Prezi gift card worth $100. All you need to do is to head to the link colmio.com/thatpropertymum, and Colmio is Kolmeo.
So let's just look at things that preventative. So the preventative is, I can't help you for the today, right now. We'll come to that in a second, but the preventative, if I was a director right now, one of the things that I focus on, and I run another, there's a workshop that I run, which is around the 100-day client onboarding program.
Yep.
So, and I delivered that. I'm
Love
across
it.
in New Zealand in 2 weeks' time, delivering that to a workshop. I've got 4 workshops for 60 property managers in New Zealand. And that's one of the sessions. And I did that for another agency in Traralgon a little while ago. Develop a 100-day onboarding program, and it will create referrals and clients for life. So I'm happy to have a chat with you about that. But what it basically is actually bringing the person on, bringing the new business on in that 100 days. My approach to property management is all around hot seating. So that means that anyone at any time should be able to walk into the business and manage the properties with a level of competency. So making sure Property Me is right, making sure the data's right, making sure everything, or Property Me, Tree, Colmio, whatever you've got, make sure all the files are there, making sure you've got all the knowledge. Nothing should be in anyone's head. So the moment that everything is in, so if Kylie Walker's working for me and all the knowledge around the client, the agency, so the client, the property, the tenancy is in Kylie's head, then that's a risk to me as a business owner. So I remove all of that. It all needs to be in the software, so in the database. So one of the very first things that I do is I make sure that there's multiple touch points from every person in the office that needs to be involved in that relationship. Because too often we have this solo relationship, property manager, client. So director on my 100-day onboarding program, director calls the new client, all new clients, day 3. Director calls them day 30. And then every 6-month director needs to be in a relationship with that client. So what happens too often is, as directors, what we do is we say we're employing staff and the staff are taking care of the relationship until there's a problem. And then when there's a problem, often it's not salvageable. Does that make sense in that relationship? So the trust accountant would be calling as well to explain how the rental statements work, sending out videos. If you've got other team members, if you've got leasing person picks up the phone and rings it. So now what we're doing is the agency should have the relationship with the client, and Sally, who's the property manager of the day, delivers the operational aspect of the relationship.
Love that. Love it.
So that's when I'm talking, and this is what I'm talking about with risks, because I'm in the same boat. When I would get those, Friday afternoon, when you get that little, I don't know, are you working in one office, like with your team? You get that little letter and it just says, a little envelope that just says, Michael, confidential. And then you open it up and it's a resignation letter. And you're just thinking to yourself, right, my next month is just going to be horrific. So when you get that, but more importantly, you've now into damage control because you're trying to establish relationships with people that you probably didn't have relationships with. So as I said, I can't necessarily say, let's fix what you're doing right now. But if I was a principal today, I would be making sure that as a director, I had a direct relationship with every person in the rent roll, everyone. And it was an ongoing one. I would want to know the kids' names. I would want to know and we're AFL down here. I'd want to know the footy side. I'd want to know what floats their boat. if they've referred clients to me, and all of this can be done, I use massive amounts of labels. I've over 370 labels that I use in Property Me. And a lot of this is all tracked inside of there. So the database is inside of there. And then, of course, you've got to go back through to your employment agreements, which are really not really worth the paper they're written on. But if you're going to have clients attacking your rent roll, so staff, you may not like what I'm about to tell you. They will only leave if they didn't see value in the relationship that you were providing. And again, you might not like what I'm saying.
No, it's true. That's a lesson I've learned. Yep.
Yeah. So if the relationship is being provided by Sally, the property manager, whoever it may be, and not the agency, then the client will walk. But you didn't really have it anyway. You only had it whilst you're employing the staff person. So from a director's point of view, I would be looking at, and this is what I do. I work in risk. I work in how do we mitigate risk from a principal's point of view, from someone walking out the door and buggering off with 100 of my properties, whether they're poaching them or not. I don't want anyone to walk out the door and a client feel as though all of the relationship was with selling. So none of it, for me, it's about hot seating. Develop a business that anyone can walk into. So whether I've got a temp, a mat leave, whether I've got sickness, I've got annual leave, whether I've got whatever it may be, even if I just want to shift the portfolio around, I have full control over that because the agency has the relationship and nothing sits inside of a property manager's head. The other thing to that one as well, Kylie, it actually improves your staff retention.
Yeah.
Because we're not so stressed that everything has to be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to explain my situation, I was out of my business for 3 years from over COVID, and I only came back into it last year. So I had let those relationships. Prior to that, I was the clients. I was the one bringing on the business. I had the relationships with the clients, and then obviously as I, was, and then you're right. I've come back in now, and I'm trying to, reestablish relationships. Yep. And unfortunately, it was too little, too late, I guess. But anyway, I've learned some really valuable lessons, which you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. I can't change what's happened now, but I can make sure moving forward that this won't happen again. And hopefully after our conversation, lots of other principals and business owners are listening to this and are mitigating their risk when it comes to team turnover.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, I mean, I don't know what the problem is, and I'm going off topic here, but I don't know what the solution is to team turnover because I just can't get it right. For 15 years, I've been running my business. I do take it personally, and I do think you do turn the spotlight back on myself. You can say it's an industry thing. I won't make excuses for it, but if you've got some advice around that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I've got a lot.
Help me, Michael.
Yeah. I don't buy into it's an industry thing. I don't buy into that. And I'll tell you the reasons why I don't buy into it, because all industries are in the same boat. So we're all got high staff turnover in a lot of industries, right? Where I find the biggest of the issues, and I just want to I'll go back to that systems and processes. It all starts for me from getting the agency right. The agency, in many instances, makes the job so much harder. Some agency, the directors, make the job so much harder for staff than it ought to be. Property management's a tough gig. And I mean, really, really tough. Not always attractive, but it's made even worse often by the agency, the systems, the processes, or the lack thereof. So the very first thing that I'd be making sure to, if you want to try and increase staff retention, develop a staff retention plan. Most don't. Like, have a written documented plan. What do we want to do? How do we look to building an onboarding program? So recruit the right people, onboard them properly. My onboarding program is 6 months. So if I've got a brand new person, 6 months. When I do consultancy, when I go into consultancy businesses, or when I'm doing training, particularly when I'm speaking at conferences from stage, and I talk about onboarding, I say, here's onboarding 101. Start at 9 o'clock, get coffee by 9:05, get shown the toilets by 9:10, sit at the computer by 9:15, have a look at all the passwords that are no longer haven't been set up correctly, and by 9:30, off and running. Poor. That's onboarding. And that's how we do it. Ridiculous. And we wonder why people leave. I can tell you that most people that start a job on a Monday have checked out by 5 o'clock that day. They just haven't left yet. So onboard, recruit correctly, onboard correctly, and then develop a staff strategy for professional development. So these are the things that I work on.
Yep.
So typically when I do a consultancy job, I'm in there to fix the business 90, 120 days. Just get in there, fix it and get out. But when I'm working with a client more ongoing and I'm looking at their growth, their strategies, their team, all the structure, it can take 12 to 18 months. And I've got lots of examples where I've done those. This is where we sit down and we say performance reviews. Make sure when you're sitting down and you do a performance review, I would do them, and I suggest to do them April and October. The reasons why I do those, Kylie, quite simple. And hopefully not all the staff will hear this. I do them October 1st because it's not close enough to Christmas that if I really piss somebody off, they're going to leave. Yeah. So if I come in hard, they're not going to leave. So, and then we do 6 months before that. April, it's about 60 days before the end of financial year. So we've still got those April and October, plan it out. So for me, in the offices that I'm working where I'm consulting, we would already have October's performance review dates in the diary. So if you've got team now and you haven't got performance review dates in the diary now, I think that's wrong. Because I want to know, if I'm a staff member, that the director has got my best interest in mind. So if they're not organized, otherwise what happens is we get to November and we go, oh, we didn't catch up. Let's go for a coffee. That's not a performance review. So performance reviews. Now in the performance reviews, it's two-way. I want to know from you, what are your plans? So I have no issues and I'm under no illusions that sometimes there are staff that our job no longer will keep excited. So if I'm sitting with you and I sit down and say, right, Kylie, what are the plans for the next 6 months? And you're saying, oh, I really don't have any. We're mapping them out in the performance review. I want to know in the next 6 months. So I've got a gauge of, is Kylie with me or is she not? And if you turned around and said to me, I want to go into BDM, or I want to move into leasing, or I want to go off and do something else, or if you wanted to leave, I'm okay with that. But let's not leave where it's acrimonious. Let's not leave where I just get a letter and then you're out here 14 days later and there's no plan. If you want to leave, let me know. I'm mature. There are some jobs that I just can't, I can't keep you in as a property manager and doing the same job for 3 years. I wouldn't do it. So why would I expect this team to do it? So have a professional development plan. Every staff member in your office, you should have a plan of where they're going to be in 6 months' time. And I talk to directors and leaders, and I say, if you don't know what's in your team members' plans for the next 6 months, you're not a leader. You've got a title, but you're not a leader. So I want to know in 6 months' time what your holidays are. First, I've got to know what floats your boat. Like, what motivates you? When I do performance reviews, I start off with, and I'll sit down and say, Kylie, and I've got a little grid. There's 7 things that I did. I don't know if you saw me do this at PPM, but there's 7 things in my little flow chart. What's important to you? So if, for example, family is your number one thing. So if I'm a new mum and I've just had a child, family's my number one thing. So if I start running events, which are on a Tuesday night, and all staff have to attend, and it cuts into my family time, I'm now starting to alienate that person. If I start giving bonuses that are all around money, because I think money is important to me, so I'm going to start giving bonuses all around money, but family is your number one motivator, I've alienated you. I've got no idea what you like. So I need to understand what's really important to each individual person, and they'll be different across the team. So for example, if family was one of your number one values, I would put that down and say, Kylie, instead of me giving you money, did you want to take another half day off on a Friday, or back up a couple and do a long weekend, spend the time with a newborn? Now I've got your attention. These are the things that we don't do.
I love it. Can you share that maybe with me, and I can include that in the show notes, that grid that you just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a little pillow thing. It's like, and I do it. I did this last year with a team that I was working with, and what we did is we had about, I think it was like 9 or 10 different performance reviews, and would have been the April ones. And the reason why I said this is because what I was trying to do is I was trying to coach the directors, and I said, You need to learn the language that's important to your team, so as a collective, but you also need to learn the language that's important to each team member. So don't go off and start talking about health and wellness to a person whose number one priority is spiritual and mindset, or money, or family and friends. So we need to be talking in the language that's really important. And look, that's an emotional intelligence level that not a lot of people really focus on. They say, it's very Neanderthal. I have job, I pay money, you work.
Yeah,
It's very,
absolutely.
it's very ugh, like that's caveman stuff. It's just not going to work. So our industry, we have a lot of people in charge that have a low emotional intelligence connection with their team. All you have to do is ask the team.
Yeah.
One of the things I do with health checks, Kylie, is I do a staff survey, and it's anonymous, and I get them, and the staff give me feedback. I tell you, most people who are in team leader positions have never had training, should never have been there. The only reason why they are there is they're either dead or haven't left yet. They've not died or haven't left yet, and they get promoted. And then you bring a brand new person who's got so much enthusiasm, and you then sit and say, right, you need to go and sit over in the corner there with Mavis, and she's going to teach you. Mavis has been here for 35 years. And this new kid that's just come in sits there and says, where is my progression? Where's my long-term plan? And you have to have an individual plan for each person. So as a leader, know where your team want to go, and your role is really just to steer them. And sometimes it needs to steer them out, because I often would say, and I'd say to people in performance reviews, I'm really happy, Kylie, if we don't have a job for you anymore because it's you want to go to the next level, we don't have that. Let me know, and I'll ring around to colleagues of mine, and I'll try and find you a next place. That takes a level of emotional intelligence and maturity that not a lot of people would have.
Absolutely.
Because I'd much rather, and this is why I have, not in the early days, but now, I've still got great relationships with a lot of staff that I had towards the back end. The first ones hated me. And rightfully so, because I was a horror. I didn't know. I just didn't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. I've learned so much, and thank you for coaching me or consulting me right now. It's fantastic. I am just conscious of the time. Tell me, personal development. I know I can tell you're obviously a big fan, big advocate of it. Can you share a resource, tool, podcast, something with our listeners?
Yeah. So one of the things that firstly, all podcasts, I'm a massive believer in podcasts should be replacing music, whether you're at the gym or in the car. And if you're in the car if you're in leasing, you should be the smartest person in the office. If you're doing routines, you should be the smartest person in the office, because you're in the car the most. So you should be filling your brain with all those. So be wise around your knowledge. One of the things that I do try and encourage, Kylie, is that people take responsibility for their own professional development. Too often I'll sit and I do a lot of second round interviews for my clients, and I start to then quiz. So they've got through the first round, the staff like that, the directors like them. I then come in and grill them. And what I find a lot, and this really annoys me, is when people say, oh, I've never been trained, or I've never been taught that, or take responsibility for your own professional development. So the one thing that I would suggest is, if you don't have, if your employer doesn't have a professional development plan for you, who cares? You actually should have your own. So develop your own written development plan. Where do I want to be in 6 months' time, 12 months' time? What's the outcome? How do I get there? And who do I need to bring into my world to help me get there? Whether it's a coach, a mentor, a consultant, a trainer. And I'm not just talking about real estate. If your relationships are really on the rocks, go and get a life coach. If your marriage is falling apart, go and get a marriage coach. If your health and wellness, go and get a PT. So I think coaching is important. As much as I say I don't coach, I do work a lot with the teams when I'm inside of there. So podcast, the one that I love, the book that I love is Purple Cow. Have you read that?
No, I haven't. I
Oh,
will now, though. I'm going to write it down.
It's a gem. Seth Godin. So I'll tell you the
Oh,
story.
yes. Yeah,
I'll
yep.
tell you the story of Purple Cow. I've been using it. I've written a workshop off this book. I just fell in love with it. So here's the story. I'm driving from Melbourne to Sydney, and I'm driving up the Hume Highway, and I see on the left-hand side a field full of cows. I don't notice it. I'm at Kelkello. I don't know if you've ever done this trip, Kelkello. So I'm driving up and I notice some cows. Then I go a little bit further and I notice another paddock. There's some more cows. Notice another paddock. I'm 20 minutes, half hour, an hour into my trip, and there's cows all over the place, but I wouldn't have noticed them. But if I get to about Albury and then all of a sudden there's a field full of purple cows, I'm going to notice that because it stands out so much. So what the premise of the book, and that's the way I explain it, the premise of the book is build a system, build a business, build something that is so remarkable that it stands out amongst others. Blue Ocean Strategy is another one. I've got that book just right there. That's another one which I think is really important. Both of them you can listen to on Audible or those sorts of things. But my suggestion is this. Take responsibility for your own professional and personal development. And as an individual, so I'm now not talking directors, I'm talking to individuals. My position is you become so remarkable, create a hole in your business that if you left, it would be a big cavity. Because I'm sure you would have this. I've been in organizations where someone's given me a resignation letter that I've worked with, and I've gone, I'm so pleased. That is good that they're gone because we can just keep moving on. So the hole and the blip when they leave is minuscule because they haven't really made an impact. So a couple of things there. Make sure you have your own written, personal, professional development plan. Be remarkable in everything that you do. Try and show up. Show up to everything you do. Don't just sort of roll into work. Show up. And if you were a sort of person where if you left today and no one really cared, you're not showing up. That's my little
great.
bit of, that's my coaching.
That's amazing. That's great. Great advice. I absolutely love it. How can our audience connect with you further?
Yeah, sure. So they can I'd love people to jump onto my YouTube channel because I have an amazing subscriber audience of 27.
I think mine's about the same.
Is it?
Yep.
I look at these people who have got 3 million and they're making money out of YouTube. I don't know how that works, but so I've got a lot of videos where I've done interviews or training material and those sorts of things. So you can find me at Rent Roll Maximizer through the YouTube, Rent Roll Maximizer, and it's with an S. It's Rent Roll, with a Maximizer, not with a Z. On my website, you can find me on Facebook. Or you just type in Michael Furlong into Google. I'm sure I will come up somewhere.
You do.
Inside of there. You can have a look at my Google reviews. I have my coach. I'm meeting with my coach. And Kylie, I'd love for you to do one for me if you can. I'm meeting with my coach tomorrow morning. And I set a goal to have 150 Google reviews, 5-star. I only take 5 stars. 5-star Google reviews. And I'm sitting at 124. So I have to show up to my coaching session tomorrow, my accountability session, not quite right. So again, you need to have people to hold you account. You need to have that. So yeah, Rent Roll Maximizer. I do a lot of, and I'm sure you do as well. I do a lot of pro bono. I take phone calls all the time where people say, I've got this issue, I've got that. And I'll say, I'm happy to help you. And I did one last week with a corporate group. I'm happy to help you. I ended up spending 2 hours with them. I just want a Google review. You do me I'd spent 2 hours with someone. The Google review hasn't shown up.
Oh,
this is a stuff.
I'll definitely give you one because you've given me some great advice today. So,
but it's we as an agency, as an industry, want that Google because I know how important it is. I help strategize for businesses, and we've grown businesses through their Google review. I've got lots of examples where I've done that. So I just think you just need to show up. But you can find me, Michael Furlong, Rent Roll Maximizer.
I'll share all the links in the show notes anyway.
Legend.
And on that Google review, I've picked that up years ago. I still get people that call me for new business now who've Googled me. They check the reviews.
Yep.
Mine aren't all perfect, but we've got more than most of the competitors in our local area, and I get a lot of business directly from that. So
can I give you a pearl of wisdom here? This is what I teach. So Google reviews. I'm happy for a renter. So at day 3, we officers I work with, I ask them to communicate with the renter to get a Google review. Now, better to do it day 3 because the renter still loves you rather than when they've just left, because they probably don't. But whenever I go into Google reviews, I do, and I'm working with an office. I'm sorry, I know you want to get me off, but I just want to. If I'm doing an analysis, if I jumped onto your business and I did an analysis, I'll do an analysis of your competitors, and then I compare you and I say, where do we sit? And I'll go back through your Google review. So this is one thing that I teach now with all of my clients. Go back through every one of your Google reviews, jump onto Google reviews, don't go to most recent, go to lowest. Click on lowest, and this is how your clients are going to find you. So they click on lowest, and then they read through all the negatives. So every one of those negatives, if there's a negative in there, and let's just say, for example, Fred and Mary, tenants, they've left and they've absolutely caned the office. Didn't get the bond back, cleanliness, property manager was only working for the landlord. Here's the response. Thank you, Fred and Mary, for taking the time to respond and to write a Google review, although it's probably not what we were looking for. Fully understand that you wanted to express what was going on or what you were thinking. I just wanted to share with you that when you first moved into the property was clean. We made sure that the carpets were professionally cleaned and there was a good handover. When we get the property back, we need to make sure that it's exactly the same for the next person. So build the system, explain what the system is and what you've done. Don't go back and say, you were dirty, you did all this. Don't get combative.
No.
And the reason why I say that we do that, you must respond to every Google review, everyone, whether it's positive or negative. You respond to it, and the negative ones, write in there what the system is or what your process is or why. Don't say, and I see this all, we've looked in our database and can't find you. That's garbage. So use it for the person who's reading it, which is always going to be your next client, who's going to make a decision whether to call you or not. So the very first stage of business development, you don't even play a role in. It's in your Google reviews. And the person knows whether they're going to call you or not based on the way you respond.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I'm going to go straight back through my negative ones and do that today. That is fantastic advice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing all your amazing knowledge with our audience.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thanks, Carly.
There's been so much talk of stress, overwhelm, and burnout in property management lately. Do you want to know how I overcame all of that? Yes, I hit rock bottom multiple times, but I got myself a virtual assistant. Actually, not just one, but 3. But I didn't just get any VA, I got a PMVA. What are they? Well, they are the most well-trained in the business. And not only that, you also have a backup VA. So that essentially your business is never without admin support ever again. And my health, time and business has never looked back. Your PMVA can take care of tasks like rent arrears, lease preparation and renewals, maintenance follow-up, routine inspection bookings, data entry, audits, prospecting, inbox management, and so much more. And the best part of implementing a PMVA in my business was that it freed up my time and my team's time to take care of important things like customer service. What makes me feel so safe is that PMVA is owned by Tiffany Botel, both here and in the Philippines, making my data secure and giving me more control over the VA arrangement. So head to the link in the show notes to book in your discovery call with Lady Boss Tiff. One thing I dread doing is chasing up rent arrears and debt collection. It takes up valuable time and it can often lead to conflict. But it is a necessary evil when you are running a property management business. But there is an easier way to make sure your tenant's rent is paid on time and in advance, and it's called RentPay. RentPay is a secure and simple to use payment platform that saves agents time and money with fast, accurate receipting while making life better for renters. To top it all off, you'll never have to worry about dishonor fees or unknown deposits again. How good is that? Cleared funds are deposited straight into your bank account in a single daily payment with accurate receipting and reference numbers auto-assigned and it's fully compatible with all trust accounting systems. It's a super flexible payment option for tenants who can pay rent in multiple ways, including direct debit, credit card, or instantly pay with Payer ID. Fees are minimal, and RentPay even helps with the rent arrears process by automating reminders to renters when payments are due or missed. If you are currently paying large bank fees, struggling with constant dishonours because the funds aren't cleared when their funds land in your trust, or wasting time chasing up unknown payments, I encourage you to book in a free demo with RentPay and give yourself and your renters an easier way to pay rent. Can I ask you a quick favour before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.